Hello. Tomorrow is April 8th, 2024, and it is the 50th anniversary of Hank Aaron hitting home run number 715 to break Babe Ruth's record of 714. I started this YouTube channel as a way to communicate the stories of guys who are non-Hall of Famers, guys who don't usually get the attention that they deserve, in my opinion. But I need to make an exception here for Hank, my personal favorite player of all time. And I want to share the baseball cards that I have of him. I just recently completed his entire Topps run for his career, and so now is a great time to do this. Okay, so let's get started with the card that everybody probably wants to see the most, the rookie card. I picked this card up in Nashville, Tennessee, a few years ago. It was expensive, most expensive card I've ever purchased and will ever purchase. I sold a number of things in order to buy this card. I sold a guitar, a number of other big item, personal things that I owned, but it was worth it. 1954 was unique. It was the only year that Hank wore the number 5. After that season, he approached the Braves traveling secretary, Donald Davidson, and said that he was interested in having a double-digit number. And Donald, who ended up becoming a lifelong friend, he and Hank had a good relationship. He told Hank that he was too skinny to have 2 digits, but the Braves gave him number 44, and the rest is history there. I love this card. I love the 54 set. The graphic design is fantastic. Hank got lucky with this color. The Ernie Banks rookie card in this set is an iconic card as well, but it's white, and I just don't like it as much. This card and the Al Kaline are just beautiful. Al Kaline's is red background and just fantastic card for 1954. So let's see. I'll slide this one. Slide it over like that. Maybe this way. You know, when Hank is from Mobile, and when he first started playing baseball, excuse me, let me get this bracket set. When he first started playing baseball, his school didn't have a team, baseball team, and he played softball. And he was approached. This is the 55. I have this in a 4. It's a beautiful card. A lot of people love the 55 graphic design. I don't so much. I like the 56 better. I don't really care for the pale yellow, but it's a good looking card. And unlike the 56, which we'll show in a minute, that's actually Hank in both photos, or both drawings. So there's something to be said for that. Anyways, Hank was playing rec ball in Mobile when a man named Ed Scott noticed him and recruited him to play with his semi-pro team, the Mobile Black Bears. Now, these were grown men, but Ed convinced Henry's mother to let him play with them for $10 a game. Now, I know that doesn't sound like much. This is probably, the late 1940s. And Ed said that Henry's first at-bat, the pitcher assumed he was going to smoke a fastball past this little skinny kid. And Hank busted a line drive off the fence. And they walked him every pitch after that, or every at-bat after that for the rest of the game. Again, $10 doesn't sound like much, but Hank says in his autobiography that his dad bought 2 lots that they built a home on. I think it was $55 a lot. And then he paid $100 to a couple carpenters to build them a house. $100. Now, this house had no windows, no electricity, no bathroom. The bathroom was an outhouse in the backyard. And you can imagine the quality of construction. But that's the environment that Hank grew up in. And I don't think that we can even understand the difficulty of getting out of that situation. If you're a black man in the South with limited education, limited opportunities. So for Hank to be able to play baseball and earn money was probably a godsend for his family. Here's the 56. I have this as a PSA 6. I don't think it would get a 6 today if it were regraded. It's not perfectly centered. I don't know if you can tell. I wouldn't give it a 6. But it is what it is. I paid 6 prices, but I do have to say this was the first Hank Aaron card I bought. I bought it many years ago on my birthday. So I don't even know what it's worth today, but it's a great card. I love the 56 set. When I was a kid growing up, 56s were still pretty common. I mean, I was born in 1971, so they were old, but they weren't that old. But the ones that we had that we traded around, I never saw a Hank Aaron card or anything like that, but we trimmed them, not to try and straighten corners, but to get them small enough to fit into 9-slot binder pages. So I am so sorry for all of those poor 56s that I mutilated over the years. Beautiful card. Yeah, so anyways, Hank, as I said, he grew up in that really poor environment, and it turns out that the guy that he was playing for, Mobile Black Bears, Ed Scott, was also a scout for the Indianapolis Clowns, and Ed had been preaching the play of Henry to the Clowns, so the Clowns arranged to come to Mobile and play the Black Bears, and Hank hit a home run and 2 doubles that day, and pretty much solidified his Indianapolis Clowns contract. So the Clowns contract was for $200 a month while he was in high school. Can you imagine? $200 a month. I mean, the dude lived in a $100 house. So I don't know, had to be a windfall for them. 150-pound, 18-year-old kid. He talks in his autobiography about the difficulty of blending in with these grown men on the Clowns. They teased him about his worn-out shoes and raggedy clothes. So next we have, let's see, I hate to have to pull down that. Yeah, I've got one more of these suckers. 57. So I'm actually not crazy about, trying to do this. I'm not crazy about this 57 set. A lot of people like it. The photo's nice. This photo is nice. It's got really good color. So many of these cards have snow on them, though, and a lot of the photos are dark. Mickey Mantle's card, I'm sorry if I'm going to offend anybody, it's terrible. You know, there's a guy in the background that they tried to hide, kind of color him out with a black marker or something. This one's unique in that this photo is a reverse image. Hank was not left-handed, and you can see the 4 here is a backwards 4. But I love that uniform, that little Indian logo on the sleeve. I know it's inappropriate today to have that as a mascot, but I just love that jersey. If you manage to go to Truist Park, where the Braves play, there's an area behind home plate called Memorial Garden. I think it's called Memorial Garden. And they have every Braves jersey from the time they were the Boston Nationals, the Boston Bees, the Boston Rustlers, Boston Doves, Boston Braves, and then the different Milwaukee Braves and Boston Braves Atlanta Braves uniforms. It's pretty neat to see. But this card's pretty solid. That's not perfectly centered, but pretty damn good for 57 actually. I love the cartoons on the back of the old cards. 57 was a big year for Hank. The Braves won the World Series that year. And in 1957, President Eisenhower signed the Civil Rights Act. It was basically a voter rights act and didn't do much to address the many problems that minorities faced. But it did establish the Civil Rights Commission and laid groundwork for bigger legislation in the 1960s. But in 1957, only 20% of blacks were registered voters, despite being the majority in a lot of counties in the South. Many black people had been basically prevented from voting due to things like poll taxes and literacy and comprehension tests. Pretty crazy. This was not that long ago to me. This was, a little over a decade before I was born. Made it seem like an eternity to a lot of people, but really was not that long ago. So in 57, during that World Series, Warren Spahn was supposed to pitch Game 7 in the World Series versus the Yankees and came down with the flu. And Lou Burdett had to go pitch on just 2 days rest. And he ended up pitching a shutout for his third of the 4 World Series wins and also was the World Series MVP. Hank hit .393 in the series, and while he didn't win the World Series MVP, he did win the NL MVP for that season. So now let's jump. I'm going to have to start. I don't have enough holders or screen space. I'm going to start laying some of these down. Let's jump to 58. This is a card that a lot of people love. I don't particularly love it. I do like the color green, but I don't know. Something about this card just looks too Christmassy to me. It's a good looking photo, good looking headshot of Hank. This is the yellow name. There are 2 versions of this card. There's a white name and a yellow name. The yellow name is the harder one to find, so that's the one that I wanted to add to the collection. I don't have the white name. I didn't see a point in owning 2 of a card that I didn't particularly love, but I did want to have the yellow version. Cool looking back. Again, I love the cartoons. Now, 58, you can see, look how skinny he was there. Hank said in his book that he and his brother, they called themselves 6 o'clock, straight up and down, because they were so skinny. And he also said he was a vegetarian before he even knew what it meant, because they had no money for store-bought food, so he pretty much grew up on butter beans and collard greens. They were quite poor. He talks about making baseballs out of nylon, basically, I think it was nylon hose like that women wear, and wrapping it around golf balls, old golf balls. So it reminded me of a story. Ronald Acuna Jr. recently had an article that he wrote for the Players Tribune, and he talked about how he was always looking for tape, begging his mom for money for tape, because that's how they made their baseballs. Just unbelievable to think about the extreme poverty that some of these guys grew up in. So let's go to 1959 here. I just bumped the camera again. Definitely not a pro here. I remember where I was when I bought this card. Believe it or not, I was at a Savannah Bananas game when I got this card on eBay. I was on eBay during a Savannah Bananas game, but it was probably during one of the few lulls. If you haven't been to a Savannah Bananas game, man, you got to go. It's quite a trip, especially if you have kids. Send me a message if you want to hear more. It's a fantastic deal. All you can eat, all you can drink Coke products. It's a steal. Free parking. The problem is getting the tickets. So there's a lottery for that. But I love this card. I love the graphic design. I love the lowercase letters and the colors in this set. Initially, I did not like the Bob Gibson in this version. It's got the Pepto-Bismol pink, but I've grown to love that card as well. I do not own it, but it's a cool card. You know, I was talking about Hank playing for the Clowns, and he didn't play for them long. At that time, after MLB started integrating, the Negro Leagues really struggled to make money, and one of the few ways that they could make money was to sell contracts for their best players to major league teams. And Sid Pollock, who owned the Clowns, contacted the Boston Braves. They were the Boston Braves at that time. And they worked out a deal. There were a couple teams that were interested in Hank, the Giants being one of them. The Braves had lost out on Willie Mays a few years earlier, and so there was a big battle between the Giants and the Braves. And Hank's talked about this many times before, about how close he was to signing with the Giants. The Braves did offer slightly more money, but Hank mentions in his autobiography that when the Giants sent him a telegram, they spelled his name wrong, and he kind of took offense to that. So I think that's pretty funny. Like, you gotta pay attention to the details. And so who knows what would have happened with Hank and Willie in the same outfield. Would have been pretty damn awesome. But as a Braves fan, I'm happy with the way things worked out. So let's go on to 60. Let's see. I'll stack that guy over here. I like this set, and this is one of the few 4s that I have in my collection. But it's I had a real hard time finding a 5. I was trying to do mostly 5s. Obviously, these 2 being so expensive, I was willing to kind of bend a little bit. But so many of these cards are just poorly cut, off-centered. Print defects. See a lot of like print lines going vertically on these, but this one's good. It's clean. This corner's not great, but that's okay. I'm happy with it. It's a cool looking card. Still young Hank. Love the back. Love the little cartoon again. He's still so young there, and I remember reading when he did sign with the Milwaukee Braves. It's at that point they had transitioned from Boston to Milwaukee. It was the first time he was ever in an airplane, and going to Eau Claire, Wisconsin was an extreme culture shock for him. He had never been around so many white people. And if you read his book, he talks about how alone and homesick and scared he was, and I just can't even imagine. I'm sure that he was. So let's look at 1961. Oh, one more. This is the 1960 All-Star card. Now, I don't particularly like All-Star cards, and so I didn't collect most of them, but I did buy a couple, and this is one of the I think only 2 All-Star cards that I bought. And I bought it because I love the graphic design. I think whoever came up with this is just genius. Like this is a killer design. I love it. This may be I don't know if it's top 5 Hank Aaron cards for me. I just think it's fantastic. And it's cheap. I mean, compared to the other cards. All-Star cards are always cheaper. 61. Not a big fan of this year's design. This image I like of Hank. Hank's got a pretty good photograph. And a lot of these cards have snow on them. You can see it's a little bit off-center, and that is a problem with this year. The back is okay, nothing special. A little hard to read for me. Tiny text, but I guess in order to get that cartoon in there, which is worth it. Again, I love the cartoons. So a little bit more Hank history. Before making his debut, he played in the Sally League with the Jacksonville Braves, and he immediately started receiving death threats. He was breaking the Sally League color barrier. And it feels to me like this had to be at least equally as hard as what Jackie did. And I'm not downplaying what Jackie Robinson did. He's one of the other focuses of my PC. And, Jackie deserves all the credit that he's been given. But Hank was having to go play in Macon, Savannah, Augusta, Charleston, South Carolina, and Montgomery, Alabama. These were not comfortable places to be playing in early 1950s as a black man. Jim Crow laws prevented him from staying with his teammates. He couldn't eat with them. He couldn't even legally put on his uniform in the same locker room. A Jacksonville columnist wrote, quote, "I sincerely believe Aaron may have started Jacksonville down the road to racial understanding." And Hank says that while that year was awful, he's not sure that he's ever done anything as important as that. Along those same lines, just to tell one more quick story. When in Baltimore with the Indianapolis Clowns, they'd stopped to eat at a restaurant, and after being served, which they had to be served, the kitchen staff threw the silverware in the trash and broke all the plates because no self-respecting white man would eat on those plates after that, if you can believe that. Insane. Okay, 1962. I love this set. A lot of people don't. I love the wood grain. Actually, I'm a kid of the 1970s, and some of the cars, especially I remember some of the station wagons had wood grain, or it wasn't wear. It was actually a decal, but fake wood grain paneling on the sides. And for whatever reason, I still like it. A lot of houses at that time had this terrible, cheap wood paneling. We didn't have it. When I met my wife, her family had it throughout their living room. And I don't know, it was what people did back then. So I don't know. I like this. And that photograph of him, it's just a great photograph. Really, really done well. I don't know. Decent back. You know, I always liked it better when they had the year-by-year statistics rather than the previous year and the cumulative numbers. But, I mean, graphic design-wise, it's got to be a nightmare to try and fit all of that into that limited space. So, completely understandable. You know, Hank talked about when the Braves would play the Dodgers, he would hang out in the hotel with Jackie and Don Newcomb and Campanella. And imagine being a fly on that wall and being able to hear those conversations. They would talk to each other about how they should handle certain situations in case they came up. Like, if there was a brawl on the field between the two teams, should they participate or should they hang back? And what should they do if another player spit on them? You know, basically running through all the different scenarios and what was the best way to handle it. Crazy. So let's jump to 1963. Good looking photograph. I don't particularly like the colors. That pumpkin orange and green doesn't really do it for me. I wish that it was a little bit different, but I still like the card. The graphic design is pretty cool. The back is beautiful. Look at that. Nice and easy to read. Love the comic again. It says Hank slammed 3 homers in the 57 World Series. Yep. Yeah. It's a pretty decent card. It's a little off center. It is what it is, man. You can't have everything at 5, at a 5 grade. And the cost between, say, a 5 and a 7 is just nuts. So I'm willing to live with what I have here. You know, I have in my notes, I wanted to mention this, but I forgot. When Hank made his debut in 1954, it was the first game where fielders were required to take their gloves with them to the dugout. Before that, I didn't know this. I read this, but before that, they would toss them basically into foul territory or behind a bag, and then pick them back up when they came back out. It's such a strange thought. I can't even imagine that, but it was controversial at the time, believe it or not. I think I had read a quote. I don't have it in front of me, but one of the players or managers that was against it was like saying something to the effect that players are going to be wasting time looking for their gear in the dugout. Interesting take. All right, 63, 64. Now we're talking. This is one of my favorite cards. A lot of people don't like the 64 set. I love it. This green is actually a pretty cool looking green. But what I love about it, look at that close headshot. But you see how his hat extends beyond the bounding box of the background image? I just think that's such a cool touch. Would have been so much easier just to crop out the top of that hat. Somebody went the extra mile there, and I love it. This, oh my gosh, this is what I don't love. Dude, I can't even read that. I literally can't read that. Now I'm 52, but good God. You don't put a light colored text on a white background. Boo. Bad decision. Again, I want to go back and mention, Hank finished 4th in Rookie of the Year in 1954 behind Wally Moon, Ernie Banks, and Gene Conley. And I think that's pretty fair. When I look back, I think you could have made a case that Ernie Banks should have beat Wally Moon, but that was just me looking at the raw numbers. I also wanted to mention, I forgot to mention this, but back in 1959, just to go back a few years, that was the year that Pumpsie Green came in to the league with the Red Sox, and finally all MLB teams were integrated. So kind of a special year. In 59, Hank hit 355 and won the batting title. And he said that he thought that they could have won that he could have won the Triple Crown, but a fan in Philadelphia threw a bottle at him sometime during the summer that caused him to twist his ankle, dodging it, and it cost him some time on the DL. But I look back at Baseball Reference, and it didn't look to me like he missed that many games. I think that might be a little bit of a stretch. I don't think he was gonna catch. I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe Ernie Banks had the lead in home runs, and I think Hank was maybe like 7 home runs behind him. So, but point made. He became the second youngest player in 1959. He became the second youngest player behind Ty Cobb to reach 1,000 hits. He was 25 years old. Heck of a hitter. A lot of people said that they think that he could have won multiple batting titles, but at some point he started to just seem to swing for more power. And I do think that I've read his biography like 3 times. That he was kind of challenged by Eddie Matthews, a friendly rivalry, and he loved Eddie. And that's the one thing, like when you read his autobiography and you get a chance to see and read his feelings about some of his teammates, you get a real sense for how some of these guys were just loved by him and treated him well from the get-go. Eddie Matthews was one of those guys. 1965. This is the pennant, the year with the pennant in the lower left corner, and I love this graphic design. This is again as a 4. I wanted to find it in a 5 just to get a better copy, but I think this is a 5. This is a 5 and 4 clothing. So the centering on this, I'm telling you, man, you don't get really any better for 1965. That's pretty good. And look at that back. Now that's how you do a back. Come on, man. Night and day difference. Great card. Last card as a Milwaukee Brave. So that year they left Milwaukee to come to Atlanta. But it's a great card. I love it. 65. 1966. Another card that I like. The K-line in this year is another one of my favorite cards. Cool colors on the back. Got to give them that. That salmon. I don't know that would be my first pick, but at least it looks salmon to me. I don't know what it looks like to you on camera, but pretty cool back. And again, I love the cartoons, man. You remember these were supposed to be for kids, not for 50-year-old men like me. And there it is. There's the Atlanta Braves hat. Oh, sorry. I was holding it up, looking at it myself. Now, I wish I could see the jersey, but I have a suspicion, because there are a number of Braves in this year that don't even have a hat on. I have a suspicion that he might not be wearing a Braves jersey. They might not have had them yet, and that may be why it's such a tight shot, and we can't really tell what's on the jersey. And in 1966, before the Braves moved to Atlanta, I think I said this earlier, there were no MLB teams south of the Mason-Dixon line. So this was a big step. There were still laws in place in much of the South where black and white people couldn't even play chess together or ride in a car together. Forget about the restaurants and hotels. But this was an incredibly important step for society and baseball. In 1966, Hank toured Vietnam with Stan Musial and who else was on that? Let me look real quick. I don't have it in front of me. Oh, here it is. Joe Torre, Brooks Robinson, and Harmon Killebrew. And Hank and Stan were roommates. And Hank says many times how much he loves Stan Musial. Stan Musial, I mean, everything that you've ever heard about the guy is true. Not that I would know, but when Hank goes out of his way in his autobiography and talks about how much of a gentleman Stan was and how much he loved the man, I don't know, it just says a lot. So that's 1966. 1967. I feel like I might be complaining a little bit much, but I do not like this card. I don't like
The graphic design, I think, no, it's not the first facsimile autograph. I guess it's on the 55 and 56 as well, but I'm not a big fan of the facsimile autographs. I don't like seeing the batting cage bubble in the background. I don't know. I just think that there could have been better, but I do like the back. Pretty clean looking, easy to read, appealing. But not much else to say there. I'm going to move on from this card. 1968. I love this card. This is the burlap sack look. And a lot of people don't like it. I love it. I don't know why. It's just something that I find aesthetically pleasing. And this is a 6, and it was unique, and that is the Milton Bradley. So if you're not aware, Topps had basically, they sold cards as normal, but they also provided cards for a Milton Bradley game. And the cards were football cards, baseball cards, some automobile cards, and so on. But a select few of the baseball cards made it into that game, including this one and the Nolan Ryan rookie. And I don't know why they don't demand more of a premium, because the odds of them surviving in good shape seem to me to be much more rare. But this one survived, and it's beautiful. I love it. Love the back. Everything about it. So the guy I bought this from, a unique kind of story. He was not a baseball card collector, but he bought a storage locker that somebody defaulted on, and inside the storage locker was this card. So, bummer for that guy, whoever owned that storage locker, but I bought it. So, 1968, unique kind of environment for Hank and the Braves that year. Opening day in Atlanta was just one day after Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral service that was also in Atlanta. So it was a hard day for the city, hard day for Hank in particular. And in 1968, he hit home run number 500, a big milestone reached. 68, I'm also I grew up a Tigers fan, so 68 was obviously the big year for the Tigers, winning the World Series that year. And Hank, I was going to intend to show his stats year by year on Baseball Reference when I edit this, but I can look at this, and he hit a low, I think it might be a career low, 287 in 1968. 29 home runs. Now that was the year of the pitcher, as they called it. Bob Gibson had a 1 point something ERA that year. It was nuts. Danny McClain won over 30 games, and MLB ended up changing the height of the mound after that. It was just becoming too difficult to hit. So here's the 69. You can see Topps reusing the same photograph. I think there was a reason behind that. I don't remember the details, and I didn't look it up to prepare for this, but I think there was some kind of a labor dispute that prevented them from getting fresh photographs. So I'm not going to beat Topps up over that. Although you see in the background here, 54, 5, and 6. Same photo. And I forgot to mention the 56, that's actually Willie Mays sliding into home, but whatever. Mistakes happen. But this is a nicely centered copy, I feel. 69s are tough. I think I bought this from Jeff, JT Texas Aggie, on Twitter, and it was the last one I needed for the run. If you're looking to buy stuff online, I avoided Twitter forever just because it's the epitome of toxicity. But I've met some pretty good dudes on there, and Jeff is a guy who he's a fantastic seller, and I bought a few cards from him. Is this focusing? I can't tell if this is having a problem focusing. Gosh, I hope not, because I don't want to have to re-record this whole thing. So that's the 69. And again, 1970, maybe the worst Hank Aaron photograph on any card. It looks like somebody snuck up on him in the tunnel and, Hank, over here. And he looks up and they snap a photograph. It's just bad. I don't care for the script name down at the bottom, but, I do give him credit for trying something new. The back is pretty nice. I do like that. Sharp. Yeah, not a big fan of this set. In 1970, Hank joined the 3,000 Hit Club. He was the 9th player, the first black man to do it. And so this is where I come back to Stan Musial. Stan was there to congratulate him. And just like Stan, Hank's 3,001st hit was a home run. Now you know. 1971. Oh, wait, not quite. I forgot about this one. The other All-Star card that I have. Now, as much as I don't like this card, I love this card. This is just cool, man. I like the graphic design. I remember this. I actually remember when I was a kid at a card show, I bought the Carl Yastrzemski version of this. I was a big Yaz fan growing up. I was a Red Sox fan. And now that's cool. I love that. That's fantastic. As a kid, I just love, I love these. Pretty neat stuff. All right, now 1971. So this was the year I was born. So this set I always thought was kind of cool. But man, I'm telling you, so I really started collecting big time in 1980, and I don't remember ever seeing a 71 Topps card that looked this nice. They were all beat to hell by the time 1980 rolled around. That black border was just so tough. This one's centered nicely. I love the graphic design. I love the colors used. Pretty cool photograph. The back is okay. I don't know that I needed the same picture as was on the front, on the back. I think they could have used that space a little bit wiser. Could have put something there. Even a different photograph, but the same photograph just seems kind of lazy. But in 1971, Hank hit home run number 600. So he hit 47 home runs at age 37. And suddenly people started talking about possibly him hitting 715. It became real. His OPS that year was 1.079, 1,079. And his OPS plus, 194. I mean, if you're a stats guy, that's 71 was a hell of a year for him. And he would struggle in 1972. Maybe not statistically, but emotionally. And let's look at 72. So this card, this design, man, screams 1972. Funky colors, funky. It's got this kind of, I think this is supposed to be some kind of like a Art Deco kind of design. Pretty wild stuff this year. It's not my favorite photograph, but it's a pretty cool card nonetheless. This is a good example of the dangers of buying stuff. Oh, is this thing not focusing? Of buying stuff not on eBay. You can't see it, can you? There's a stain there on the top right here. And it makes me wonder, I couldn't see it in the scans in the auction, and it makes me wonder if this is maybe one of those cards that has been through a Kurt's Card Care, or somebody washed it at some point to get rid of the stain, had it graded, and then the stain came back. I don't know. But it's enough to kind of ruin it for me. So at some point, I'm going to replace it, and I'll take the hit. And believe me, when I sell this card, I'm going to make it very clear that there's a flaw there. I mean, it's not an expensive card. For Hank, it's not an expensive card. I don't know why somebody would. I feel like I was intentionally deceived on eBay. But anyways, I had kind of mentioned 1972 being a tough year for him. In 1972, he had started receiving death threats and threatening mail and racist letters coming, and he was struggling mentally and emotionally. And for the Braves, fortunately, hired Eddie Matthews to come manage at the end of the season. I think he managed the last 50 games, and that was crucial for Hank. Eddie was unbelievably valuable to Hank. He mentions it over and over again. Eddie actually had one funny reference. At one point, they tried playing Hank at first base, and Eddie moved him back into the outfield. He said he was moving him back into the outfield to save his life because Hank, wasn't used to seeing these 100-mile-an-hour ground balls and line drives coming at him from 90 feet away. It's 1972. So it's 1973 here. The photographs in this 73 set were all taken, I believe that they were all taken in New York. So this is probably during a Mets game. And they're all action photos. Some of them are really bad. I think Steve Garvey was one that was really bad. So this isn't the greatest photo, but at least Hank's doing something, and you're not looking at the back of him or something like that. So it could be much worse. It's a little bit off center, left to right, but this is another tough set. I do like the back. I think that black back would have been cool on the 1971 set with black back, black front, but pretty cool card. Even so, there's a guy on YouTube that does a whole history of 1973 where he went back and found all the games that are pictured, and it's a long video, but it's pretty cool. Also, in January 1 of 1973 was when Roberto Clemente died, and a really tragic event. So Roberto's card of this year is the only, I think it's the, maybe I shouldn't say only, it's the first card that was issued posthumously of somebody who had died. Hank got off to a crazy start in 1973. 7 of his first 9 hits were home runs, and it just got things, that the talk of 715 even more on the lips of everybody. And the FBI started reading his mail in 1973. He was getting 3,000 letters a day, and it was also the year that they had received a kidnapping threat on his daughter, who was in Nashville attending college, his daughter Gail. And the FBI had staked a bunch of undercover guys around the campus, as grounds crew and things of that nature, just in case. So Hank had a lot on his shoulders, and that was also the year that the city of Atlanta hired a full-time policeman, Calvin Wardlaw, to basically be his personal bodyguard. He was personally assigned to Hank, followed him everywhere. Hank got, this is a quote that I wrote down from his autobiography, but he got 930,000 letters in 1973. 930,000, almost 1 million letters. The USPS gave him a plaque at the end of the year for receiving the most mail. I don't know. I'm sure that's not one of his most treasured awards, especially given the nature of that mail. But again, he received 930,000 letters. The second place letter getter was Dinah Shore with 60,000 letters. All right, so we know, obviously, 1974. Home run king. So April 8th, 1974, right at the beginning of the year, there was some debate over the Braves wanted to keep, I think they opened in Cincinnati, and the Braves didn't want him to play because they didn't want him to break the record in Cincinnati, and it's a whole big deal. The commissioner got involved, and they basically forced Eddie Matthews to play him, but the way things worked out, he obviously did end up hitting 715 at home, which was great. And this card in particular was tougher than you might think to find. A lot of these were diamond cut, So I'm real happy with this one. I love this card. I think it's cool. Hank genuinely looks happy and probably relieved that it's over. I like the little crown up here. This, I don't know, it just looks like 1974 to me. Everything about it. Pretty neat. And then we have the 1974 highlights cards from 1975. Pretty neat card too. Al Kaline has a similar card. Hank Aaron sets new all-time homer mark. I'll share the video of his 715th, obviously. People were telling him that he was going to be shot if he came to their city. And, that's not even bringing up the racial slurs that people would throw at him all game long, but just the fear of somebody attacking him or his family, which makes it even crazier with those two guys that get onto the field and start rounding second base with him. The fact that those dudes could even get out there and get that close to him is just crazy. I know one of those guys is gone, but one of them is still alive. It might be interesting to look up and see what that guy's doing today. If you watch that video, one of the cool things you'll see is Craig Sager is there. He's the one in the white trench coat. You may know him from NBA basketball coverage. He passed recently. Well, not recently, probably a couple of years ago now, but Craig was a really good dude. And then you'll also see the Braves mascot at the time, Chief Nakahoma. I know it's racially insensitive now, but he was good friends with Hank. He was one of the first men to congratulate him and shake his hand. And then we have two more, so hang in there. This is the 75 Brewers card. Initially, I didn't want to buy the two Brewers cards, but the more I thought about it, Hank loved Milwaukee, and the Milwaukee loved him, and he was thrilled to go back. You know what? I just saw a crease for the first time in this card. Right down here. One of the few raw cards. I don't know if you can see it. Well, that's a bummer. I might have to buy a replacement 75 Hank Aaron. And then 1976. Yeah, this one's not great either. A little off center. Good old, nice old man Hank here with those big old strong hands. Still a great photograph. And I don't know, cool card. I love the colors of it. It's pretty cool. And a little bit hard to read. But only because the guy had an amazing career. Look at all those numbers. That's a full card right there. Yeah, pretty much impossible for me to read. But, the Brewers allowed him to extend his career 2 more years, thanks to the DH in the American League. So, can't complain about that. Hank, when he wrote the book, I Had a Hammer, he was 57 years old. So, let's see, what year was he born? He was born 34. This is 76. So, was he 42 here? Man, he's 10 years younger than me here. But he said in his book that the Ruth chase should have been the greatest period of his life, and it was the worst. He couldn't believe that there was so much hatred in people. It's unfortunate. But thankfully, Hank lived a long life after this and was able to be celebrated, unlike poor Roberto Clemente. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed hearing about Hank. I know I'd love to hear any feedback that y'all have. I would love to hear any stories that I may not have mentioned. Always interested in learning more about him. Thanks. Take care.